lot's already been said. So, but the way I look at responsible leadership is, I think it's while there is some PR, but there is some element of concern, which is getting communicated by frequent use of that word of responsible leadership. I think we are all entering into a terrain where rule-based ways of working is changing dramatically, right? It's all about taking the right decision at that moment. It doesn't need to be big impact or wrong impact. It could be at that small impact area, right? So how are we communicating? How are we exercising ourselves, right? There are areas of gray. Certain things, something came your way. You have a sales call to close, but you don't have your internal approval. Should you go ahead and do it? A simple transaction that also requires responsibility and decision making on the fly, right? So that I think is where a lot of these things are coming from. It doesn't need to be significant issues which otherwise are talked about. I think the other thing which is happening is increasingly there is a lot of team-based ways of working, which I think we talked about in the previous panel as well, which I think is also demonstrating the need for being responsible with each other. So within the firm which I work, for example, there's a very important value system we drive on. We call it personal responsibility in each and every interaction which we have. Now, whether that's internal interaction, external interaction, we are supposed to be responsible as we engage. Small example, an email should be responded back within 24 hours. There's no rule, but that's the way we try and drive that because we want to be responsive as we go through, right? So that's a behavior which we drive. From a leadership standpoint, I think there's a subtle change which we are trying to drive. I've seen a few of my colleagues talk a lot about servant leadership. It's no more. You see, the role of a leader is to encourage further leaders to groom up, right? So how are we supporting that growth? How are we are a people's company, right? We are a consulting firm engaging with a lot of people, talent, Gen Z, Zs, etc., with various kind of expectations. So how are we seen as a visible leader? How are we seen as helping them grow? How are we staying connected? I think that's an element which we are focusing a lot on. I mean, just to add some flavors on top of what all everybody has said.
If I may just, I just want to emphasize very quickly that there is no pejorative connotation to PR. PR. I mean, we should not see PR as a bad thing. In fact, you should see PR as organizational currency. Because, see, unless you communicate, unless you make visible your ethical governance, it's for furthering the organization. There's nothing to feel bad about PR.
It has to be balanced. I mean, PR is not a bad word.
No, and it also, I mean, and when you put yourself out there, your own standards of accountability, they have to go up necessarily. You're not going to stand up in public and say something which is untrue. So just wanted to clarify that PR part of it.
PR, I mean, whenever we use some of these words, it has a negative type of inter. But maybe I'll just talk about 2-3 points which have actually emerged, and maybe then we can just have a discussion based on them. See, one, as you said, of course, it is about long-term credibility, and it has to be built up in terms of there is about trust, sustainability, trust. You should support other things. There are 2 points which also came up, which I thought maybe I'll just talk about it and allow, I mean, maybe you can give from your point. One, you said it will develop a competitive advantage. So does beings in terms of responsible, especially when you say sustainable or ethical, does it really give me the type of competitive advantage? Because my cost will increase, I will not be any more competitive, and because by being transparent, why would a customer want to pay more because you are responsible? For me as a customer, I want to get what is best for me. Why should I be, I mean, how does it really make you competitive? So that is one dimension which is there. The second dimension which you also said, that trust is both external and internal, because we want, finally when you say PR, we are talking in terms of how is it from external point of view. But most of this responsible leadership is top-down driven, so we want to have in terms of this. But how do I make my person at the every level also responsible? That value system that you talked in terms of, and in terms of it's a team-based. So the way I have to build up. So if my people at the ground, I talk about values. Everywhere you see there is a mission, vision type of statement. We talk about values. But for me as an individual, if I have to get a contract, I need to do something which may not be ethical, as you said. But that walk the talk, I may be doing that. But what about the person at the door, or at the sales level, or at in terms of this level, whatever level? So these are two dimensions which I thought maybe something which, how do we really build it up? So maybe we can.
Actually, I have an example that straight away came to my mind. So, in one of the previous organizations that I used to lead, um, out there, we had actually done a competitive bid for something. Um, I'm going to mask some information, but we had done a competitive bid for something, and somehow we got to know about the pricing through one of the guys. We made it a point to go back to the party and tell them that we had gotten to know about the pricing. We would have won that contract hands down. We actually went back, said we have come to know about the pricing, it's been leaked. So letting you know, up to you, what do you guys want to do? We lost that contract because eventually, obviously, our pricing was higher than some of the other folks. But what became very, very clear in the market was that we were a firm that everyone knew that they wanted to work with. And we eventually ended up getting probably a lot more contracts because everyone was very, very clear that it's a rubber hits the road conversation with these guys. There is no hanky-panky that will happen. It built us up as a straightforward, good organization to work with for some of the largest players out there in the market. We gained competitive advantage just by being responsibly out there telling them what shouldn't happen, irrespective of the fact that it actually may mean a short-term business loss for us. So I think dealing responsibly with these, and it was a top-down leadership call that we taken, right? Absolutely translated into a long-term competitive advantage that firm of mine still actually enjoys out there in the market.
Just to add to, I think what I somehow don't agree with that statement that responsible leadership or responsible way of doing business increases your cost. I think cost cutting comes from various sides of it, right? I mean, it requires more discipline. The processes have to be stronger. So when we say responsible leadership doesn't mean that we take away our compliance controls. I mean, compliance control will remain, and every company where we are working, I'm sure it's only increasing by each passing day. So that is a cost on its own. I think the point is where customers also would like to work with you if they see you as a long-term partner. I mean, companies like us, which are here for big impact programs for government and large corporations, they don't want to work with somebody where suddenly you find that, okay, there's a code which you've written and it's actually a copied code, right? I mean, the ramifications of bad press, bad delivery, litigations, nobody wants to do that. Or if you're buying something from some company which is using, child labor, right? You don't want to do that, right? So I think those days are past. I think there's enough maturity. The dimensions are now changing towards ESG, women entrepreneurship, diversity elements. So I think these are all good causes, which only contributes to competitive advantage in my view.
Just a very quick one, because you've given an example, and you've given the philosophy that responsible leadership is not necessarily, an added cost to the business. Just to support that, very quick data. So if you look at the Edelman Trust Barrister 2024, it says that the public wants 74% of the respondents said that they want the CEOs to lead societal change. But the same thing said that they trust only 50% of the CEOs. So in that gap lies the data behind what both these gentlemen have said. The public wants it from you. And public means both your shareholders and your customers. If you work to bridge that gap by actually demonstrating responsible leadership, walking the talk has been said, that is how it will be a competitive advantage because people want it. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, I somehow differ because I work in manufacturing sector and we see it daily basis. So, I mean, we are into processing, we are into refining, we are using chemical. We need to have effluent treatment plant running every day, and it has to treat the water, and then that's how you can discharge it. And then our next door neighbor, and we are of course guided by we are USMNC, so we have to follow the rules and regulations and laws of the land. And then our friend on the other side of the road, he's an Indian manufacturer. His factory just produces the same product and puts it in the drain. And then there is a cost of compliance, there is a cost of, but we know that no, our effluent treatment plant have to work 24 hours in the day, and there is a cost that you have to put in. The other guy don't maintain it still, so, and we are competing in the same market. The customer doesn't, the consumers to whom we sell, they don't know. I can tell you 80% of the product which is sold as organic in India is not. When we were into organic supply chain, we were actually implementing, and you don't believe, if you go by the rule book, if you put the things on the ground, no one, I mean, you can't sell in Indian market. No one will, people, yeah, everyone wants to buy organic, they don't want to pay for it. We have to exit those plans. Similarly, for our factory rules, you have to have an 8-hour worker shift. So we are putting, our plants run 24 hours, we have to put 3 shifts. The other guy puts just 2 shifts, and he doesn't even pay this. So yes, there is a cost of doing it responsibly, and that's what companies have to accept it. That yes, if we have to operate in a very difficult environments like India, and I can also tell you the safety conditions at the plant, you'll be surprised to see that how people operate. We have like zero tolerance on the safety. So even if and we have empowered our people, even at the shift level, if they see any equipment malfunctioning or any requirement, they can stop the production. And there is a cost of a start and a stop. We've empowered people to, like, any there is anything that they notice, that any deviation, they have to report it. Near miss reporting, when we made it transparent, there's so many near miss reporting that has actually helped us to improve the safety condition. But then everything has a cost, and it adds. So yes, there is a cost. There is an upfront cost for the businesses to run it in a compliant and responsible way. But then you have to accept it as a part of the business. And then there will be certain customers who will definitely appreciate and work for it. But then a lot of people will not pay it. So that's the reality of the life and segment in which we operate.
To that. So see, I mean, this entire conversation about leadership now becoming responsible leadership is, in my opinion, more driven by the decision making at that point in time. The compliance standards of companies which we have. For example, I also serve an American company, right? I mean, we all have extremely, global, definitions of working, right? So those are in their own way. They already existed, right? I mean, I also compete in the market, and I have got some IT service provider which will come and do it at half the price, right? I can't beat. So that's not a market I'm here to serve any which ways. That's the way I look at it. Within the guardrails of the business which I want to do, or I'm permitted to do, I mean, bringing that responsibility, I think, adds to the competitive. That's where I was coming from, rather than.